In this second part of Beyond the Barricades, I talk with Steve Chalke about standing with courage in the face of fear as we speak and stand up for justice, compassion and inclusion. Together we explore how power can be so enticing for all of us, and we remind ourselves that we must speak out even when our voice is shaking and even when we think we might lose it all, responding to the invitation to embrace fear as we seek to live love out loud. In the end, we see that courage is a muscle we can always strengthen. Acting justly, loving mercy, and walking humbly. This is the path we are invited to take, and this is how we will all find our voice. Hey Steve, good to see you.
And you, Jill, which is what I always say, because it always is good to see you.
You're very kind.
So here we are again.
It's not getting at all boring for you.
No, no, I did mean again, like, we're here again. I mean, we're here again. You know, so all these good things keep coming round, isn't it?
I know, it is good. It is fun. It is fun.
To sit here and, chat.
Talk about good stuff, important stuff.
Yeah, chew on things.
Yeah. So this is part 2. Last week we did a part 1 about power, really.
Power.
Not last week, last episode. We talked about we're the ones we've been waiting for.
We're the ones who have more power, more influence, more agency than we sometimes recognise. We get intimidated by the situation rather than realising that real change comes from the ground up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Liberties are taken. They're never given.
Yeah. Oh, there's the quote. Liberties are taken, not given. Like that. And then, so what we're going to talk about today is all about how, when we get to that place, how do we speak truth to power? And there's that incredibly powerful picture, which I found a copy of. I was looking for it today, of Leisha Evans, where she stood up to the riot police and Baton Rouge. And it became a very... I think that year it won awards as well because it was such a powerful image of this woman.
In Louisiana.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Standing tall against the riot police all coming at her.
It's a great picture to Google it.
Yeah,
to Google and see if you know, because she's just stood there she's just stood there in her dress in front of these guys all with armour-plated gear. They look like something out of a... some Marvel movie or something. Yeah. And she's just stood there and there they are backing off from her. It's an extraordinary thing.
Incredible. And there's this quote by Maggie Kuhn, which has been obviously is quite well known about speak your mind, even if your voice shakes. It's such a great, like those two images for me, that woman standing there, just her in her just this summer dress, surrounded by these police in these uniforms, this kit.
Yeah, and all their weapons.
Yeah.
And
she's got nothing other than who she is. And then that quote, speak your mind, even if your voice shakes. We need that today, right?
Yeah, we do. And your voice always shakes, doesn't it? If not literally, metaphorically, inside you feel... Back to what we were talking about in the last episode, you feel your weakness, you feel your lack of articulation, your inability to find the right word at the right moment in the right way. But when you speak your mind, even though your voice is shaking, even though you're shaking, even though you perhaps prefer in some senses to walk away and leave it to someone else, it's amazing the change that comes around. It's absolutely staggering. And I've seen that happen time after time after time over my life. It's when you think you can make no difference that suddenly some huge breakthrough happens.
Yeah.
Extraordinary.
Just to think about this other element of this, though, that sometimes we can be the people who are not the power holders. We can be the ordinary, the group that's in the middle, that's seeking to bring change and bring difference. And before you know it, we've actually we're enticed by power, aren't we? Like the notion of power can be a very heady and very attractive thing, can't it?
Yeah.
I mean, you must have seen that happen.
Yes.
How does that, because it comes by stealth, I think, doesn't it, on many people?
Yeah, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, as they always say. Yeah, it comes by stealth, I think, for all sorts of reasons. When you're in power, you sometimes strangely feel that you've got to toe the line, everybody else's line who's in power with you. So you end up strangely fearful of speaking out in case you lose your power, because your power comes to you on conditions, doesn't it? It comes to you given to you by others. You're given position by others, and you then feel, if I speak out, I will lose my position, I will lose my power, I will lose my authority. I mean, so much goes wrong in one of the institutions I know best, the church, because of that. How many people don't speak up and don't speak out because they're scared that they'll lose their job, they'll lose their funding, they'll lose their subscriptions? How many subscription organizations in Christianity have a different private opinion to the one they constantly publish, or constantly speak about? How many people who hold one view of life and inclusion will never say it in public? Never, because
for fear.
I'm talking about the world that I know. If I say what I think, I won't sell any more books. If I say what I think, people will leave our membership. If we say what we think, I might lose my job or my reputation. And then
what's the consequence of all that, Steve? Because it's far-reaching, isn't it?
It's far-reaching. I have been in rooms where people have said, this is Chatham House rules in here, where you can say what you really think. I've been in rooms where people talk about private beliefs and public beliefs. We believe this, but we couldn't say this to our people.
Because if we did, then...
Yeah, if we did, the fear is they'd reject us, you see. Our membership would reject us, etc. And then you get people in the membership, whatever it is, who won't speak out because their fear is that if they say what they think, their leadership will reject them. So everybody's scared of one another. The times I've been, that honestly, I've been more times than I could possibly count over the years. I've been to speak at a church because a church leader, a vicar or whatever, has invited me to speak about various things that they know I speak about, and they say to me, Steve, at the beginning, they say, it's great that you're here. Now, don't hold back. Just say it as it is for people. So I do, I speak about what they've asked me to say because, it attunes with what I think and feel. So then you stand at the door as everybody leaves, and they all come up to you and say, God, that was really great. I hope our vicar was listening. I hope our minister was. I hope our church leader was listening. I hope they were listening. God, dear, they'd be upset. But it's what we needed to hear. And there's this standoff. Everyone's scared of somebody else. And in actual fact, try as you might, you can't get them to shift forward. And without exploring it any further, or kind of spelling it out, I should say, any further, I know that as I say these things, you can think of endless applications of that you see going on in front of our eyes. And the implication for you as an individual, I think it's a really uncomfortable place to end up living your life, isn't it? Where you believe something deeply, but you are afraid to say it.
You're consumed by compliance.
And you lose your integrity. Perhaps you try to make up for it and say, well, I'm taking this stance for the sake of the masses or something, but I don't know
what it is. Speak up even if your voice is shaking.
And that's about courage, isn't it?
Yeah.
Courage, because courage and bravery aren't an absence of fear.
No,
they are an embracing of fear.
Yeah.
So if you find it easy, it doesn't need any courage.
Yeah.
C.S. Lewis tells a great story in one of his books that I read years and years ago, and I can't remember which one. And he talks about this issue, and he says there are two men, and one sees a cat up a tree, and he climbs this little stepladder to let the cat out the tree, and he carries it down. And the second man later that day at the same town is a firefighter, and there's a burning building, high-rise building, and they put the ladder up against the building, and he climbs to the very top of the building, and he climbs up to a window, and he helps a child out, and he brings the child down to the ground. And he says one man, that second man, is applauded by the press, applauded by the street, applauded by everyone for his absolute bravery. Whereas the second man, who climbed 3 steps to let a cat out the tree, is entirely forgotten. What's all that about? But the world doesn't know that the guy who climbed the stepladder to lift out the cat had a paranoid fear of heights. Whereas the firefighter was trained and lived for this job. It was his big opportunity to do what he was trained for.
Yeah.
So C.S. Lewis's point is that courage isn't that fear doesn't exist for you.
No.
Courage is when fear is there, doubt is there, that you overcome it.
You do it anyway.
And you do it anyway, even though your voice is shaking.
Yeah.
Or your legs are shaking in this case.
Yeah. So, that's really helpful, Steve. And then just to dive even deeper then into this thing about being enticed by power, that for some of us, when we're enticed into those positions of power, we then become fearful of like losing position and losing status that we have gained. So really we really have to come back into what's motivating our desire to speak to power, don't we? We have to really regroup around what's motivating our desire to even be involved in the first place, right?
Yes. And wrestle with yourself.
Yeah.
And what you truly believe to be true. What I've found, though, is courage is a tough thing. But courage is like a muscle. The more you use it, the more you have of it. It's like creativity. You know, if you use your creativity, people sometimes say, don't they, oh, if you use your creativity, you might use it all up. Actually, the truth is, the more creativity you use, the more creativity you make. The most creative people are people who practice being creative. The most courageous people are people who practice being courageous.
Yeah.
You become more courageous. It's like everything else in life. So it's about taking that step, making that stand, speaking up, asking the question that others shy away from. It's about sitting with the person that everybody else ignores, whatever it might be.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it might be a big thing. It might be a little thing. It might be a noticed thing. It might be an unnoticed thing. But if within it, in yourself, you feel that you must do this and you wrestle and fight over whether you can afford to do it, do it. And my experience is the more you do this, the more courageous you become. Because if you pray for courage, what's God going to give you? Is he going to zap you? With a whole pile of courage? Or is God going to give you the opportunity to be courageous?
Yeah, absolutely. So another thing that I've spotted, and I don't know if you ever spot this, is sometimes people, we have this like, I want to change the world. And then they find themselves in a position where they've got influence, and then they become more and more distant from the coalface of the work, and it becomes more about them maintaining their position than the thing that was actually the reason why they got involved in the first place. So there's that happens. And another thing that can happen is people replace the connection to the cause with their busyness. So they're no longer truly connected to the thing that they're really passionate about. And they get fixated on creating really smart systems to make things work and make things change.
And I think that creeps across you, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's not an intentional thing, but it's the manager who spends all the time sitting at the desk writing papers and making important phone calls and never goes out to see people on the shop floor. Yeah. It's the same syndrome. Yeah. And sometimes perhaps the manager doesn't like people and so hides away in the office. But a lot of the time it's that all of this stuff takes over and unless you fight to be on the shop floor or wherever it isn't really going to work for you. And the more detached, as you say, you become from reality, the bigger the geographic distance and the bigger the social distance between the decision maker and the shop floor or the community, whatever, the more likely it is that the policy that's produced, that the paper that's produced, that the principle that's produced is irrelevant. Yeah. The social distance between the social distance as well between the decision maker and the people this impacts it can be huge, and the further it is, the more meaningless the decisions are. And so you got to work at it, I think. I try to work at it. So keep yourself grounded, keep yourself doing the job. Yeah. Sometimes I listen to leaders who, that they speak and they tell you stories, and they tell you stories about what's going to illustrate the points they're making. But you realise the story's 20 years old.
Yeah, or someone else's.
Yeah, or someone else's. They can't talk about what happened last week or yesterday, somebody they bumped into, things that are immediate. And the reason for that is because they've been locked behind a desk or locked in a car or locked writing speeches or locked on stages or whatever it might be. And you've got to fight that and balance it. It is, of course, if you have the opportunity, important to stand on a stage and important to make a speech and say what you think. But what you think has to be informed by being on the shop floor, as I'm using that. Being with the people, being at the grassroots.
Yeah. I can't remember if we've talked about it on a podcast episode before. I've definitely been in a room with you recently where we've talked about this, where you offered to be receptionist for a day. Oh, yeah. Didn't you, in one of our academies? And as we were talking about that and you were explaining, just like you get to see exactly what it's like.
Yeah, it was a fantastic day, actually. It genuinely was a great day. And I swapped with one of the receptionists in our school. I swapped my job for hers. And in one of our secondary schools. Yeah. And it's just like, I probably described it at the time, it's like being in an episode of the EastEnders or something like that, or Coronation Street or something.
And be in the UN all at the same time.
Yeah, because everything's going on. There's so many plot lines running. There's a mum crying in the corner because, that something's wrong with her child and she wants to talk to the head teacher or someone, and there's a dad who brings him some sandwiches that his son left in the car, and there's a guy trying to deliver a ton of A4 paper and wants to know where it goes, and there's people ringing in because they've got to go home early and go to the doctors and all the rest of it, and staff ringing down because they want you to get this and do that, and there's all these plot lines are being worked out in front of you, and you're kind of to change the metaphor, you're trying to juggle all these balls at the same time, and do you know why? It was one of the greatest days for me, because it's like, this is what a school actually is.
Yeah, and so if you're writing a policy, you've got experience. Maybe that's what we should be saying to people and to the government. If you're going to write a policy if you're trying to come up with some youth work policy, if you're trying, come and hang out, come and do the job.
And that's exactly, now I'm so old, I get a chance to speak to politicians a bit, speak to them, or either in person. Of all parties, to them or either to them in person or to them through the media. And I'm constantly saying, yeah, come, get involved, come and see this, come and do this. You'll enjoy it. It'd be great. I know that's what keeps you alive, actually, keeps you relevant. That's the only thing to get involved.
And so this other element then about speaking truth to power, I clocked the other day that the Apple board had decided they would continue to commit to their EDI policy and all the rest of it. And I was reflecting again on just that power of being rooted. In order to speak truth to power, you have to be rooted in your values, don't you? You have to be driven by your values so that you're able to stand, in front of the riot police, so that you're able to stand there and feel the fear and do it anyway. Unless you know what you're standing on, you will fold.
Yes, absolutely. And so for me, as you know, I've always been inspired all my life by Jesus.
Yeah, absolutely.
All my life by Jesus. And he had that extraordinary ability, didn't he? He was rooted in what he believed about inclusion. Love God and love your neighbour as yourself. Who is my neighbour? Everyone.
Everybody.
So that was the ground on which he stood. He was rooted in that. And I think it's so sad that often people are scared of church because they think church is all about judgment, putting you down, etc., etc. But if you read the story of Jesus, the reality is he was only ever angry with one group of people. Yeah. And it was the leaders, the religious leaders, the civic leaders, those who excluded others, who barred them from inclusion into society, etc., etc. And Jesus raged against those people. Yeah. Now, he knew how dangerous that was. And, of course, eventually they took his life. They murdered him. They put him on a trumped-up charge and they executed him. But it was that courage, even though his voice was shaking sometimes, and some people would be offended by that. But Jesus himself explained that it was tough. One day he's near to the time when he's going to be arrested. He actually prays and he says, "Father, take this cup from me, take this suffering from me. I can't bear it. I'm struggling." And he was anxious. Yeah. Really anxious, of course. That's to underplay it. And so there's this, from the week before that happened, there's this fantastic quote of Jesus that's recorded in Matthew's Gospel. And he's speaking to the leaders who exclude all sorts of people that they've chosen don't fit. And he says this: "Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You give 1/10 of your spices, mint, dill, and cumin." They gave their religious offerings in. Yeah. "But you've neglected the more important matters of the law: justice, mercy, and faithfulness. You should have practiced the latter. You strain at the gnat, but you swallow a camel."
Wow.
I mean, he's not pulling his punches, is he? No wonder they were upset with him.
He was,
And that's just one short quote from him. Jesus was going, constantly, what God requires of you is that you walk with justice and mercy.
And humility.
Yeah. And he was quaking sometimes in his boots as he did that, but he was committed to his core values and principles, which was what drove him on.
Yeah. Tutu said, if you're neutral in situations of injustice, you've chosen the side of the oppressor. That's a quote, isn't it?
That is a quote. That's a quote.
And he was inspired, clearly, obviously, by Jesus too.
Well, it's hard, I think, to really understand who Jesus was without finding your voice in truth. One of the things I say very often to myself, and because I learned this, when growing up, I thought Jesus was a preacher, was a talker, and sometimes he did something. But if you read through what we call the Gospels, the stories, the narratives about Jesus' life, what he actually was a social activist. He was a justice campaigner. He did things, extraordinary things, unexpected things things that astonished people, things that offended people. He did things. And sometimes he even stopped to comment. he even stopped to talk. But in actual fact, if you took the stories of Jesus, the Gospels of Jesus, and you boil them down to their core, they're not about what he said. They're about the things he did. And indeed, the whole Christian faith is founded not around Jesus' words, it's founded around the things he did and the way he lived, which he sometimes commented on.
And gospel means manifesto?
It does. It means good news.
Yeah.
It means good news. It means good proclamation. It is a manifesto. It is a campaign. And so Jesus, in one prayer, only one prayer Jesus ever taught.
Yeah.
He said, when you pray this like this. He said, when you pray, say, God, your kingdom, your way of doing things, come. Your will be done right here on earth. And of course, as we know, a prayer isn't something that you pray and say, over to you, God. A prayer is something you pray and then you nurse and you walk with and you put into action in your own life. So, there it is. Jesus did it. And Jesus said, look, if you're going to pray about anything, just pray this. Pray that you find your voice. However wobbly it feels.
Find your voice, even if it shakes. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Jill.